All right. It's been way too long since I made one of these, but I'm back with my first commentary of the tier, and it's for E11S. I've been asked by a handful of people where the uploads have been this tier, and if I'm feeling lazy or burnt out. I definitely am lazy, but the bigger reason is that I'm not really comfortable with the idea of uploading footage for a fight that I haven't optimized myself yet. I want these videos to be a helpful resource with some clear thoughts put into them, and for them to be as informative as possible. Although I don't do that great of a job of this sometimes because none of these videos are scripted, and I either talk about things that are irrelevant or I forget to mention other important things. This gameplay does follow the AI style pretty closely. Unless you are maintaining 99 to 100% casting uptime, this is not something to focus on in this commentary. Focusing on your own casting uptime would be many times more productive. That being said, I will elaborate here or there on some choices that I made for AI lines, just not all of them since we would be here for ages. Finally, this gameplay is not perfect by any means, and not just in ways that I will point out. Use your best judgment when learning, think outside of the box, and for yourself, and you'll go far. With all that out of the way, let's get started. Let's first talk about the opener for this fight. Fatebreaker does Burnt Strike at about 30 seconds in this fight, where he turns to a random member in your party and aims, his sword to slash at you. We don't want ley lines to be active at this time because if he points towards us or anyone close to us, we're going to lose precious uptime. So it makes sense to choose an opener that will pre-pull ley lines so that we get the full value out of them before Burnt Strike happens. So modified JP opener is a excellent option that comes to mind. I choose to do a modified version of the modified JP opener where instead of going into B3 at the very end of it, I do transpose and do a slow F3 back. I just think this has a little bit more potency, but if this is if you don't want to do this, if you don't have an MP trigger, that's perfectly fine. Modified JP does the job just fine, and it doesn't change how we dodge Burnt Strike because I use a Xenoglossy anyway. I'm going to start rolling the footage, and I'll talk about the next question that's probably on your mind for this fight. With two melees, how can a black mage pre-pull ley lines, right? Well, if the boss is just pulled south at the start and melees go north, they can still get all of their positionals. This is fine for this fight specifically because the boss does Burnt Strike anyways, which will turn where he faces. And because of this, we're able to, I can say something like, hey, let me start south, pre-pull lines south, and then after that, you can face this boss north, and then I'll be north. So my clock spot is northeast, right? So this boss is facing south. So relative to the boss, I am still northeast right now. It's just that the boss faces south instead of north from the beginning. I'm not sure how good of a job I'm explaining this, but this is an easy adjustment to allow Black Mage to pre-pull ley lines. Pretty simple here. I don't place my ley lines far in because of the electric. I have to be out and not hit any melees. Fire, my partner just comes to me, not a big deal. Like I said, I use the Xenoglossy here to dodge the Burnt Strike if it was pointing at me, to weave Sharpcast, and also to weave in Surecast in the event that it is Fire Burnt Strike. Right here, I'm going to swap into Ice, and I forget to do it in this pull, but normally I like to sprint here. I like to sprint here because if I get the tether right now, it'll be electric or fire. And if it's electric, I have to be in the front. And if it's fire, I have to be in the back. So weaving and sprint here allows me to get to those places very comfortably and losslessly. I don't do it here because I forget. Don't be like me. Remember to sprint. It's a useful tool. Sprint as an OGCD basically increases how far you can slide cast. Just think about it that way in a lot of cases. So I don't get the tether here. It's fine. But if I did, I just kind of explained how I would deal with that. There's a raid wide coming up that hurts quite a bit, so I'm going to addle that as well. And there isn't too much to talk about for this fight because, or at least not right now, because it's kind of a dummy. You'll notice that I am getting quite lucky with my mana ticks, and I'm opting to skip Blizzard 4. I will not always choose to do this, and I'll explain why coming up soon. But first, I have to talk about Turn of the Heavens, which is the first mechanic that requires me to move again. So Turn of the Heavens creates a bunch of like orange and blue circles. And for the first one, you always end up going to a blue safe spot. When I watch streams of this, I see a lot of players just blindly follow their team because it works, right? One tank explodes and the other 7 players chill together in a safe pocket. It makes sense. But there's actually 3 safe pockets, and I'm going to choose to go to one by myself, and I'll explain this will help a lot. I would recommend doing this, and I'll explain the benefits as we go along. So right now, nothing fancy is happening. I can do all of this stuff all the stuff I'm doing in this pocket right here, I could do if I was here as well. The real time this starts to shine is right about here. We can see that the boss the boss is in the middle yet, and it's facing in a way such that my melees have to be kind of still over here to get positional, so they can't move to the middle immediately. And then the boss dashes to the middle and does burn strike. So because we have we have a lot of players that are likely to be around here, right? So if we are positioned back here with our ley lines active, there's a very, very good chance that while we might not get targeted by burnt strike, another party member that is very close to us gets targeted by burnt strike, and that is very not good. By being up here by ourselves, we minimize the chance that burnt strike targets us, but more importantly, that targets nobody close to us. I'm not sure that made too much sense. Also, you'll notice that here I skipped this over, but I do cast Blizzard 4. You can see I have hearts here. This was done because I wanted to weave in this leylands right here. It's also used for something else. I'll get into that a little bit later. But the first tether this time was electric, which means the second tether is going to be fire. Burn strike here, we can see targets silver Falcor. It's just slashing over here, which means I'm perfectly safe in my lines. Let's see what happens if it would have slashed anybody back here. Then the slash goes like this, and I'm still perfectly fine. The only person maybe that it can slash here and really mess me up outside of myself is Gunbreaker. If this happens, unlucky, but these are pretty good odds, right? Again, I chose to Blizzard 4 there for a couple of reasons. One, if this was fire, doing a Blizzard 4 cycle is very flexible and gives me a lot of weaving slots that I can use for Surecast. It's not fire in this case, but yeah. And after this, it's going to do another tether. I know for a fact that this time it's going to be fire. And I know that by doing a standard cycle, I will enter ice roughly around the time this tether comes out, and that gives me a lot of time to properly manipulate to deal with the mechanic. I'm lucky. I don't get the fire tether, and I choose to stay at my lines instead. It's a stack. Before I continue, allow me to show you what a cool little thing for electric. So I'm going to pull on this. So let's talk about what happens if the first tether is fire and the second tether is electric. Well, you can still stay here. It's just your party has to do a little bit of adjusting for you. So here we can see, let me go back a little bit. So we can see that the fire burn strike just happened. In here, we see that Ara gets the electric tether. And what he's going to do is he's going to walk up, but instead of being directly north, he's going to be kind of in a line between me and Fatebreaker. And then my 2 tanks will be like perpendicular. There'll be like a 90-degree angle. They'll make it like a 90-degree angle between me, Ara, and them, right? Or like Ara, the boss, and you get what I mean. And what this does is this makes the cones point not directly at me, so there's a little like safe gap right here. And I get to stay here. This trick is useful for, like, if you're playing a white mage in this fight, you can have your white mage be out there like that, assuming healing is fine. Just know that the more people you have doing this, the less effective it technically becomes, because it means that burn strike is twice or 3 times as likely to punish you. All right. Let's move on. I haven't really touched on my rotation too much yet, but I do a lot of... I'm able to skip Blizzard 4 a lot here because my movement in this pull is very simple. I've gone from... I started, on this 4 marker, and then I moved out for Burn Strike. I came to the middle, and then I came over here where I parked myself for a very long time. It's going to cast Elemental Break here. I choose here to, instead of opting to dot, I go into a fire phase because the phase is going to end very soon, and I don't think that the dot will give value. However, this is a mistake because I'm going to instant cast a bunch of Fire 4s into a Despair, 3 Fire 4s, and then a Despair. And we'll see that the boss still has some time left, and I go for this Blizzard 3 cast, which almost finishes but doesn't. So, a couple of things here. One, technically Freeze would have been better than Blizzard 3 here because Freeze likely would have hit the boss, the cast would have finished. Blizzard 3 here, while the cast does finish, I'm pretty sure that ghosts. But the smarter thing to actually do in this position would be to just Thunder here. So I would Thunder 3 here, and then all these GCDs would be one behind, right? But instead of hard casting this Blizzard at the end, it would have been an instant cast Despair. So I would have gotten the Thunder, the dot damage on Thunder, a couple of ticks there, and then Despair as well. Or again, Freeze. It's a small little thing, but try to end your phases on an instant because it kind of cheeses you a full extra GCD. There's nothing too fancy about Intermission 1. I do it normally as if I would in any party. One little tip I can give you here is because these intermissions give you time to build polyglot stacks, like Xenoglossies, and they allow you to re-enter after the intermission with 3 Umbral Hearts and Umbral Ice 3. One reopener we can consider using is the modified 10 F4 opener that we used back in E8S in Phase 2. So if you're not familiar with what this is, it's basically a Thunder 3 into Fire 3. You drop your ley lines, you use your triple cast if you want to, all that kind of stuff, and you do 5 F4 into Despair. You go into Blizzard 3, you T3P with the Thunder that you got, and then you do 5 F4s again. But in order to do this, you have to sharp cast somewhat early. The earliest you can sharp cast is roughly around here. So after you've been, after the, I don't know the name, after this thing happens, a little bit after, if you press sharp cast, it'll be still active when you retarget the boss, assuming that you first GCD Thunder 3. I don't do that, but that is a suggestion for players in the future, especially ones that run the higher spell speed set, because I'm not actually sure if I can do this with my spell speed. I'm playing at 2000, but I know for a fact that you can if you play higher spell speed because I did this last year. Anyways, Phase 2 starts, and my main focus in Phase 2, outside of just maintaining uptime, is one, I want to use ley lines on cooldown, because if I do, what'll happen is my ley lines will once again run out right before a Burnt Strike. And the second thing I want to do is I want to put this potion on cooldown as soon as I possibly can. This is not something that you would focus on in a normal kill, like a weekly or like a prog party or just any generic clear party. I am forced to use this potion as fast as I can because we are speed killing, and every single GCD that I delay this second pop by, I lose on my third potion. So I have a little focus here for that, and that'll come into play later. So now my clock spot is northeast again, and that'll actually change up really soon. We want to place our ley lines kind of further out, so like around this marker is fine. Don't place these ley lines too far in, because if it's electric, that's going to make it really, really hard for your tank to get uptime. So place these further out because that works for both electric and fire. I'm going to opt to do 5F4 into Despair, and if we were doing this, if we were going for the modified 10F4 opener that I talked about earlier, instead of T3P Mana Font here, we would instead go into Blizzard, we would sharp. You see that my sharp cast is not up right now because I used it late in the intermission. But yeah, just know that option's there for you. I make a mistake here, and not only do I double weave under ley lines, I hit triple cast first and then mana font. You always want to do mana font as your first weave because it takes time for the mana to like come to you. I get around this. I realize my mistake, and I Xenoglossy because I don't want to sit around twiddling my thumbs waiting for my mana to come so I can fire 4. All right, so I know I said that my clock spot is now northeast, but because we know for a fact that the next elemental break is light, and my healer partner is in Astro, me and the Astro actually swap clock spots from here on out. So now I am east, I get to stay stationary, and my Astro will come to me. The next mechanic that comes up is Burn Strike. So one little thing that would technically make Black Mage life easier is if at this point my party were to stack relative boss north and relative boss south. This might be asking a little bit much though, especially if you have maybe another caster, if you have another like a white mage, if you have like melees that specifically need to be on a flank at that time. A little bit too much to ask for maybe, but technically maybe a little bit better if it's possible. Here the boss doesn't directly face me, but I do move a little bit. I choose here to do a double Xeno into Fire 3 Swift F4. And the reason I do this is because when I saw this, this was the only thing that came to mind that would allow me to maintain casting uptime while dodging the baited puddle AoE after. The reason I can also get away with doing 2 Xenos is that I have so many Xenos banked, right? You can see here that I have 2 Xenos banked, and one big reason I'm able to do this is because my movement this phase has been extremely simple. I started at a northeast clock spot where I either stay alone by myself or my healer comes to me, and then I swap clock spots so I get to remain east the entire time. And I just came from an intermission where I was building Polyglot. This fight gives you a lot of Xenoglossies, so use them wisely, but you can be a little bit more lenient with how you choose to use them because you get more, right? All right, so I do F3. Swift F4 lines up me being able to move. I don't sprint here, but sprint would have been a fantastic idea because it's about to cast the tether mechanic again. Luckily, it doesn't go on me, but imagine the struggle here if it was on me and I'm completely south. One thing that would have worked, I guess, is I could have gone further south, but yeah, it's not on me. All right. I'm still opting to do AI, and you'll notice here that even though I'm doing Fire 3 and triple cast comes up, I choose to not triple cast. Remember what I said at the start of this phase. I said at the start of this phase that I have 2 goals outside of maintaining perfect casting uptime. The first is I want to put my ley lines on cooldown as fast as possible, and the second is I need my potion to be used as fast as possible. So when I press this F3, I look at my ley line timer and I see that it's 8 seconds left. And my potion has 15 seconds left. In hindsight, I could have used triple cast here, pressed F4 3 times, weaved in the ley lines, and then use this T3P to use my potion because my T3P has 16 seconds left. This would have worked, but at the time, I did not think about this option. So instead, I decided to go for the 3 hard cast Fire 4, and I'm going to clip triple cast, another Fire 4, ley lines, Fire 4, Despair, potion. And my T3P did refresh itself. If it didn't, I would have just ended with T3P. Yeah. So these lines come out. You can actually place these lines in the middle because there's a safe color, although I'll just show like what part is actually dangerous. So if you place your ley lines in the middle, you actually have quite a bit of leeway to be perfectly safe for this mechanic. We can see here, right here, that actually this entire like box here, perfectly fine. So there's no risk with putting your ley lines in the center. Just make sure they're actually in the center. I think mine are slightly offset a little bit, but yeah. And here you can see that it's doing burn strike, but my ley lines have 2 seconds left. And when I leave, they're gone. Technically, I do make a small little mistake here. I do 1 fire 4, 2. I think I do 4 fire 4s into a despair. I could have done 5 fire 4s into despair. So if I did that, this would have been fire 4. This would have been despair. This would have been blizzard 3, and then I would have Xeno'd him, done T3. But yeah, not too big of a deal. And I'm going to swift cast fire 4, I think. Yep. All right. It does one more tether mechanic here, which I get. And once again, I have sprint. I should be using sprint. But I have an insta to deal with this because I've opted to do standard. So it's not a big deal. If I had chosen to go for the AI line, and right now I'm in fire and I don't have any luxury of casting a fire 1, this sprint would have been much more important for me to press. And me not using sprint this pull is a very, very sad thing. But yeah, it's a holy. So I go to the front of the boss. And right here, what my mind should be focused on right now is thinking about how I can end this phase at the end of a fire cycle. I think I get a little bit lost here. So the optimal play here, I'm pretty sure, is for me to finish this despair cast, do maybe like a Xeno transpose lucid into T3, and then go into a short fire cycle. But I guess I panic a little and I don't do that, and I go straight into ice. And this is a little bit unfortunate because I get full mana, but I only get 2 fire 4s off, a despair, and then a T3P. It's not the worst thing that can happen, but this could have been quite a little bit better. Anyways, intermission 2, not too much to talk about here. It's going to be the same thing, my same approach as intermission 1. I'll mention the earliest you can sharp cast to do another 10F4 modified reopener if that's something that you want to do. It's a pretty similar timing as well. So right about here, when you're looking for the safe spot to stack on, you would press sharp cast, and the sharp cast would last all the way until you casting Thunder Thread on the boss when it comes back. Okay. One thing about this intermission is that the boss actually comes back faster than after intermission 1. So make sure, I know a lot of people spam Umbral Soul during intermissions to keep their gauge up to, maybe build hearts if they haven't already, but do not, anytime past the second burn strike even, I would say just do not press Umbral Soul, because the boss will come back. You can see here that right after this happens, the boss comes back and becomes targetable. So make sure that your GCD isn't rolling when this happens. Unfortunately, these lines should be placed in the same way as from intermission 1, where you want them to be kind of far out, because if it's lightning, then you grief your melee, right? Or you leave. You should leave, right? The boss came back way too fast. I didn't get in position fast enough. I don't think I used sprint. I'm really not doing a good job with sprint this pull, but yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do some leyline timings that are a little bit abnormal here, and I'll also do something a little bit unexpected with my triple cast, but these match my goals. So my goals for this phase are to, 1, I want to drop leylines as fast as possible in the reopener to give myself the opportunity to maybe fit in a second leyline before prismatic, and I'll talk about that when we get there. And I also need to maintain perfect casting uptime in order to get to the safe spot for second turn of the heavens, which is a very, very spooky mechanic. I don't know why they would make a mechanic where you have to walk so close to the edge of the arena, but whatever. Again, these lines should be further out. They're not, because I did a bad job here, but luckily it's fire, so I'm not punished. I should mention here that the reason I'm still east here and that Ara is north is basically any elemental break that has the possibility of being light, I have swapped with my healer. So now I'm east and he is northeast. So if it's fire, we move together after. If it's electric, I'm just far out, nothing changes. If it's light, we have the bonus of me being already in place. So that's the logic for that. I'm going to opt for another mana font here. Oh, by the way, if you're not speed killing this fight, this is actually where I would recommend your second pot to be used. You have so many tools here. You just came back from an intermission. You have like a bunch of Xenoglossies. You have mana font, because if you used it at 0, you used that 3 minutes, it'd come back up at 6:30, right? You have so much to burn here. I'd recommend this to be your second pot window. I forgot to mention this. It's been a while since I've done this. Yeah, you'll see here that I had a triple here and a swift. I didn't mention this earlier, but you'll notice here that at the start of this phase, I opted to not burn the swift cast. Even if my triple and swift cast are up right now, I will not use them because I will save them in order to get to the safe spot for Turn of the Heavens. And this is perfectly fine because I won't lose any usages at all. So let's imagine if I used triple cast right here. So I use triple cast at like 6:40, then it comes up at 7:40, it'll come up at 8:40. 8:40 is during the transition, so it's whatever. Here, I'm going to use, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. It's been a while since I've done this. I use triple cast at, looks like about 7 minutes. It'll come back at 8, and it'll come back at 9. So, gives me a lot more mobility for this part. Although you can slide cast your way out. Once you're in the safe spot, there isn't too much to worry about here. I see here that it's lightning. If it was fire, I would have just slide cast to my partner a little bit more. Here, I think I have, yeah, so here I have 7 seconds left on Astral Fire. I have 7 seconds left on Thundercloud. I'm considering a transpose line at this point, but then the Thundercloud refreshes. And I choose to not use Thundercloud, or sorry, I choose to not transpose line because I see here that my sharp cast is coming up soon, and I have Xenoglossy. And I want to be able to sharp cast this T3P. So instead, I make a on-the-fly decision. I choose to not transpose, and I use Xeno to weave the sharp cast, and I use T3 with sharp cast. One cool little thing you can do here is you can have your physical range. I didn't get prey here, but if you have your physical ranged pre-position as if the tether was going to be holy, this gives you a very quick and convenient taxi for you to go to in the event that the tether is on you and it's holy. In this case, it is holy, but it's not on me, so we don't worry about that. Okay. Now that we're at the end of this phase, we can talk about the merits to using ley lines here. I would not recommend this in a non-speed kill scenario, but this is something that should be on your mind if you are speed killing this boss. So I'll talk about this once we finish Prismatic again, but the justification is if you think that you can gain a strong GCD or 2 from using ley lines right here, then it's perfectly fine, right? So in this case, we see that I cast 4 Fire 4s, I cast a Despair, and I cast a Xenoglossy. This is a very, very strong finish. And if I wasn't just starting Ice here, there's a good chance that I opt to not use these ley lines because the extra GCD, like let's imagine here I was in Fire instead. Then what happens is I go through my Fire cycle, and then in a, 10 seconds or so, my Fire cycle will end. And the extra GCDs I would gain from this ley lines would be something like Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Thunder 3 proc, F3, Scathe even, right? Weak GCDs. Think about don't just think about when to ley line, think about the actual GCDs that you gain. Again, I wouldn't recommend this for non-speed killing, but I'll talk about why this could be a use case for kills that are faster than, say, like 930. All right, Prismatic happens. Again, nothing too much to say here. We can talk about sharp cast. I'm just going to skip the footage. Okay, so if we cast Thunder 3 here, then we go back 15 seconds, so we're at 9:14 here, go to 8:54. something around here. So when you see blasting zone past half of a cast, you can pressure cast. All right, so this is where I'm going to talk about that last ley line that I did. So imagine here if I had not used ley lines back at the end of the last phase. I would use ley lines right here. But let's think about the extra GCDs that I would gain. So here, the boss is already really, really low HP, and I'm burning through a fire phase really quickly. I even use a very fast F3. And we can see here that the boss is just going to die. I'm going to do a fire cycle. It was a mistake to even dot because this dot isn't on the boss for long enough for it to be worth it. I should have just straight up gone into fire 3 and done a normal fire cycle, right? So now let's imagine I've burned Despair, Xenoglossy, I have 0 mana. Let's imagine I have Leylands up right here. What's the extra GCD that I would have gained? A Blizzard 3. Anyways, the faster your kill gets, I think this kill time was 924, but the faster this is, the more you should consider burning ley lines at the very end of the last phase, even though it's not optimal because it's better than what it nets you here. I also weave in my third pot at the touch. I weave in my third pot at some point here, and every single GCD that I get under this pot gains like 50 or so potency, or a little bit less because of this potion. And this is the reason why I stressed putting on cooldown so much in the second phase. Yeah. There's a handful of things that I've done in this poll that I wouldn't really recommend to people who are progging, people who are doing weeklies, people who are even doing optimized runs in PF. But hopefully I've kind of explained to you the thought process behind this, and you'll be able to adjust what you do based off of where you see the boss HP at, based off of what your party does. This is a very uncomfortable commentary for me to kind of make because it's been a while since I've done this, but yeah, hopefully it gets better from here. As always, let me know if you have any questions, concerns, throw those in the comments, and yeah, I look forward to showing off some more things later on.